show this morning, a new feature from the Libertas Institute. I know I just butchered the name, but I've been practicing and I'm sure Jon will help me with that. Jon England is a Marine, and I love bringing that up because, as you all know, my husband and I are here in Eastern North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, Bogue Airfield, New River Air Station, Cherry Point. They're all here in our nation's backyard. So we get to interact with our Marine Corps daily, their families, their spouses, and the retirees. So I'm excited to bring over Jon to the show. He's also a podcaster. He's a homeschooler. He's an educator. He has a long and powerful resume, but more than anything, he has passion for our next generation. So I'm going to bring over Jon. I'm so excited to welcome him to the show. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. It's so nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Yeah, I definitely spent some time in Camp Lejeune. I did some of my schooling for my Marine Corps MOS there at Camp Lejeune, and so that area has a special place in my heart.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for your service. I can always say once a Marine, always a Marine. You never say it's a previous Marine. So I learned that when I first moved here. My husband is Army, and I also learned the difference between the two as well. So yep. Anyway, but thank you for your service. My goodness, as I was listening to some of your interviews, I have you as a Marine, an educator, a homeschooler, parent. You're with the I keep butchering it. Libertas. Okay, in Utah. And then you also have a podcast, Diamond Education, with your wife. So, and the list continues to go on. My goodness, do you have time to sleep? I know you have kids.
Yeah, so I do have a bunch of kids. I have 5 kids here at home, but yeah, this is something that we're just passionate about here in our home is education and making sure that the rising generation understands what it means to be free. And so, working with Libertas as their education policy analyst, and then my wife and I starting our podcast, the Diamond Education Podcast, to help parents understand the different options that they have here in Utah has just been a really just a fun journey for us.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear what you've been doing. I was watching some of your podcast interviews and just reading some of your policy analyst pieces on education. And a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about this morning and the time we have together. I want to talk about the shutdown. And during the COVID shutdown and the exposure and the things that were revealed to you as an educator for all these years and the switchover, talk to me about what exposures you saw, which led to, I want to also talk about the micro schools and what is ahead in that. So talk to me a little bit about a lot of the common sense topics we hit here at Common Sense America face our veterans, our retirees, our military spouses, our moms and dads, and all the transplants coming here. So it's all about kitchen table discussion. So talk to the parents about what you were exposed to and then the transition for you.
Yeah. As a teacher, as a principal, that's what I did 2 years ago. That's what I was doing. I was a principal of an elementary school, and one of the things that was really concerning to my wife and I as we were going through is there was a lot of movement away from academics is what it felt like, and a lot of push towards these things like diversity, inclusion, equity, right. Which, I've had a revolution myself within my educational stance and what I'm feeling, because honestly, those types of things are things that the parents should be leading out on. It shouldn't be the school that's taking the lead there.
Right.
The school really, it felt like, was taking on a lot more of the, excuse me, the parental role.
Right.
And, you have school districts that are offering, they come and they pick your kids up. They offer them free breakfast. Right. They offer them free lunch. They have counseling services. Some have dental and medical services. They are really taking on a lot of those parental roles away from the parents. And it's concerning as we move forward in our country.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. So the parental roles, there's something that you had mentioned in your bio. I'm going to post it here. You said you increasingly understood the importance of parental empowerment and education. This increased understanding led to you joining and being a part of the Educational Freedom for Families. So talk to me about forward thinking and current day, you had mentioned the education entrepreneur piece and the micro schools. And I want to cite one of your articles that had to do with Elon Musk, which I thought was funny because he's all over the place.
Yeah.
But what does Elon Musk and the city of North Las Vegas have in common? Micro schools. Talk to us a little bit about that. Elon, I feel like he's in everything. So
yeah, just the idea of having educational freedom for parents. There's been a big movement across the nation for choice in education programs coming about. Here in Utah, we have one that's coming out here soon that our legislature will begin to address probably as early as next week. Trying to get something passed similar to what they did in Arizona, an education spending account that allows the parents to take the tax dollars that are assigned for their child in education and use that how they see fit to provide the best education they can. And that's a really exciting thing, especially as a former educator. That's really exciting for me as well. I, as many educators do, got into education because we love helping children learn and grow.
Right.
And a lot of educators feel beat down by the system, all the bureaucracy that's there, all the things that sometimes they're asked to do that go against their values. And that's where micro schools come in. The idea of Elon Musk started a micro school out of his, I think it was SpaceX office in California for his children. And then if you look at actually the shutdowns in 2020, which you brought up earlier, the city of North Las Vegas started a micro school as well. And what these are these small, think of like a one-room schoolhouse style where you bring in multiple ages. You have maybe one or two teachers there in the school, but it really becomes this tight-knit community. And the teachers have the freedom to teach and innovate and do things that are just absolutely amazing, that blow my mind as I look at it. I used to think I was a really innovative educator when I was in the system. And then I got out of the system and saw these innovative models, and my mind has just been blown with the options that are available to parents out there. And that's what really what we mean by allowing the families to have that freedom to choose how they want their child educated.
So you're seeing these pop up all over the nation.
Oh, yes, absolutely. These little schools are popping up. There's starting to be a network of them, the National Microschooling Network, which is ran by Don Soifer out of Las Vegas. He's the one that helped start that city of North Las Vegas micro school, which some of the results that they saw were absolutely astounding. They had kids coming in on reading and math levels that was far below their where they should be. And by halfway through the year, they were caught up or excelling.
Do you think those low levels were due to COVID, or do you think it was a combination?
I don't. It could be a combination, but the city of North Las Vegas is a fairly low income area. And so they were probably behind anyway. And they started this, that August coming back. So it opened up right away. And so it wasn't like they sat around for a year, like some places in the country that have done that. They started right away, which was good. But a lot of if you can really predict across the country which schools are going to have high performers and which ones are going to have low performers based solely on the income level of that family, because a lot of those low income areas are just not getting the services that they need. And that's where, like I mentioned earlier, the education spending accounts come in, allowing these families to take that money that's already assigned to them through the tax revenue and use that the best way that they know how.
I want to ask you more in depth about the micro schools, because I was listening to another interview you did, and I'm looking over here at my notes, and it's something that is a stumbling block. And I had witnessed this personally with a micro school here in Eastern North Carolina, and that is the local government. And the red tape. Talk to me about that, and talk to me about what are ways and opportunities that those who are leading these micro schools can get around that. Do they have to know somebody in the state house or the state senate? Do they have to know the right people to get these stumbling blocks removed so they can basically push forward. And I heard what you said in another interview talking about the fact that basically taking out your savings to really push forward to actually make this happen. And that shouldn't have to be the case.
Yeah, it really shouldn't have to be the case, but the unfortunate reality it is. I was actually just talking to a micro school founder who's in St. George, which is just a couple hours north of Las Vegas, but it's still
Okay.
here in Utah.
Okay.
And he one of the things that he ran into is a lot of delays from the city,
Mhm.
and those delays made him trying to make him find a different area. A lot of these city regulators, they don't know how to handle
Okay.
these new and innovative models. And so their immediate reaction a lot of times is just to say no,
Right.
which is unfortunate because there are these opportunities. And so if you have these new innovative models as these founders go forward, they are running into red tape. They're not allowed to be in like the residential zones like other traditional schools are. And so they end up in places like strip malls or in old office buildings that aren't really designed to
Right.
have children working and learning there. And so they have to do a lot of renovations. And then when they come in there, you have different things like occupancy, which I'm just learning about. That's not my area of expertise, but I'm just learning about that, is requiring to put in extra bathrooms more than what the building already has, or a fire suppression system, a big sprinkler system. And these can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to these founders, which starting a new business is difficult enough. And so when there's this lack of clarity from the cities
Mhm.
going to these founders, it really costs them a lot of money and makes it really difficult for them to get started.
Mhm. I had noticed that with a contact of mine in this Eastern North Carolina location. You described to a T what that person has been going through with the local government, and the location you described exactly to a T. And that person is now hitting more roadblocks to expand per the recommendations, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
And that person came to me and said, who do I need to contact? Do I need to contact somebody in the state house, state senate? I have these contacts. Are they going to help me? But then let me ask you this. The next question was, if I get state government or federal government help, are they going to restrict what I'm teaching?
So that's a great question, and that's definitely a fear that a lot of people have.
Mhm.
One of the things that really needs to happen is more of a deregulation. Instead of like saying, "Hey, allow these things," we can be a lot more proactive in saying, instead of just allowing these things, let's just exempt them from these laws. And
Mhm.
that's something that isn't really going to come with restrictions as far as a founder goes.
Mhm.
And then depending on the state and a lot of these education spending accounts that are out there, a lot of people do fear that this is something like the federal government coming in and trying to take over homeschools, and that just isn't the case.
Right.
A lot of these are state level things that are a lot less restrictive than what the local school is providing.
Mhm.
In Arizona, I keep referencing them because I have a good friend
Wow.
there, Jenny Clark,
Yeah.
who helped get it up and off the ground. And they they've been homeschooling for a long time. They've been using these education spending accounts for a long time in Arizona,
Mhm.
and they have not felt any restrictions on the religious curriculum that they want to buy or the religious schools that they want to go to,
Mhm.
anything like that. They're able to do what they know is best for their children
Mhm.
using these education spending accounts.
Mhm. One thing I also wanted to add to that, I don't know if you know Catherine Haley with the Oak Rose Group in Arizona. She was on the team for the governor with education. She worked for Boehner on House Education and Workforce. And so she was on my show back in September, October, and we had also talked about just the great lengths that Arizona is taking. And also, if you look to Florida, look to Texas, when Florida does something, Texas does it next, or vice versa. And so I want to talk about state by state. You mentioned Utah, you mentioned Nevada, Arizona. And then here in North Carolina, I was doing a little research. Our state legislature is now back in for the new session, new assembly. And I did a little research this morning, and I wanted to hear your thoughts. The school choice, talking about the school choice piece, somebody had written, Shelby Doyle, school choice can bring academic success in North Carolina. This was posted in the Charlotte weekly, and she talked basically to this quote, "You likely don't need me to tell you that your children all over the country are suffering the academic consequences of the pandemic, and North Carolina is not an exception." 2022 survey revealed that 52% of American families were looking for a new school. To put it in personal terms, in classrooms of 25 students, 13 families are not satisfied with the education their children are receiving. And she is associated with schoolchoiceweek.com. But I want to talk to North Carolina, and then if you want to mirror it to other schools or other states, what are your thoughts on, because I have seen, the Camp Lejeune area, the Onslow County and the Carteret County, which is where we live. And Carteret County is one of the best in the nation, in the state, if you will, for education. But I know in and around the other parts of the state, not so much. And so talk to me about the school choice piece and what North Carolina and what would be the state of education across the nation.
Yeah, so North Carolina has a couple of choices that they can use. So some different education choice programs. They have an ESA that's specific to, I believe it's special needs, and then they have a school voucher.
Mhm.
And those two are very different, and they often get confused. So a voucher specifically is used to pay private school tuition, and I believe that that can be used by your low income
Okay.
earners. And but North Carolina could expand. They could do a universal education spending account
Mhm.
similar to what Arizona passed last year.
Mhm.
And that's a way that you could give freedom to all families to go and make those decisions.
Right.
One of the things that kind of gets overlooked sometimes in this conversation of what education choice looks like is who gets to decide whether it's a good education or not.
Mhm.
Right now, a lot of times it's the government deciding for families that this is good or this is bad.
Mhm.
And really, that should fall on the parents. The parents are the ones who should get to decide that
Mhm.
this is a good educational fit for my child. It meets my family values, it meets what my child wants. There's all kinds of wonderful things out there that just aren't taught in our public school system. You can listen to a national person, somebody like Mike Rowe, who
Yeah. Yeah.
bemoans often the lack of the industrial arts being taught
Yeah.
in high schools. Right?
Yes.
There are so many students, and I had them in my schools and in my class that the traditional model just didn't fit. It
Mhm.
didn't fit who they were.
Mhm.
And there are options out there. Kids who love to work with their hands don't
Yeah.
fit into a traditional model.
Right.
But
You're
there
right.
are, I saw posted on the internet the other day, there's a school that is specific to cabinetry and woodworking
Mhm.
that, these students can go to, and they'll get their math and they'll get their reading, but
Right.
they also spend a lot of time working with their hands, building things out of wood.
Yes.
How
Yes.
amazing is that? Like,
It
how
is.
cool is that for those kids that fits them?
Yeah. No, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. I remember the those types of shops growing up, the industrial shops in my public school were very prevalent. Great teachers, great leaders. And we sit here and you and I can hash this out all day when it comes to where are they now? And just like Mike Rose said, and we can look at our nation's backyard, and these kids are so almost embedded into AI
Yeah.
versus knowing how do you wire something, how do you build something, how do you take care of yourself when all of the technology goes down.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids don't even have the first clue, let alone being able to carry on an adult and mature conversation without
Yeah,
their.
a lot of those like infrastructure projects, they're just not the workers to keep the roads built the way they need to, or upgrade the electrical system to keep working in
Mhm.
the event of a disaster or something like that. There's a
Yes.
lot of those jobs that are going unfilled.
Yeah, they are. I want to ask you about your daughter. I heard you talk about your daughter and just how you guys started homeschooling your kids. And then I guess she's in high school, and how you found opportunities for her that she would have not had if you guys hadn't have homeschooled her. Can you share some of that story? And for the parents out there who are considering homeschooling some of their kids and who also are just wanting to make the next decision to get their kids out of a certain school, and what's the best ways for them, because I hear from parents all the time privately, they're not getting the education. They're reading and math level. They're just being passed right through. And that's from Michigan to here to Pennsylvania. So talk to me a little bit about the homeschooling path and then also the amazing opportunities that your daughter's had since you've done that.
Yeah, and to be fair, we are new homeschoolers, so I want to any homeschoolers that are listening, I just know that we're just barely into our second year, and so this is something that's still new to us, and we're still learning and growing because
Mhm.
it is an amazing journey to watch my daughter. The traditional model didn't fit her. It
Mhm.
just didn't.
Mhm.
She loved going. She loved the social aspect of that, but it didn't fit who she was.
Mhm.
And we've been able this past year, last year, she actually started full time in the local high school.
Mhm.
And by halfway through, she was half-time homeschool because we realized really quickly that it just wasn't working for her.
Right.
We pulled her in for English and things like that. And one of the things that has happened is she's found this love of, and I mean, a lot of people may look down on it, but she's going into nail tech, but she has this desire to start her own business.
That's
That's
great.
a lot of freedom that can come to a business owner of, I
Yes.
can go out, I can earn money on my own. And that idea that she can go and start her own business. And there's, the academics be like, well, that's a lesser education. It's not
No.
lesser. People want that. That's a product people want. They want to have their nails done.
Mhm.
And so that's something she wants to do. She's looking at possibly going into cosmetology next year and
Fabulous.
having both of those things and getting that done. That's a need that's out there.
Yes.
And it's something that she's really excited about, and it fits who she is. It's
Mhm.
a good fit for her. She loves science too, and
Mhm.
she's talked about like going into surgery and somehow combining like this idea of cosmetology and surgical something. And
Yeah.
I love that idea of
Yeah.
this dreaming that she has with it.
Mhm.
I don't know where it will go, but I'm excited for her and her future to be able to find her own path.
Mhm. No, that's fabulous. I absolutely love that. My mother was in cosmetology for as long as I've been alive, so 45 years plus, and she found a way to thread it through raising my brother and I. And so it was her being her own entrepreneur even back in that time period. And I'll tell you one thing with the whole surgery piece, I don't want this to sound too morbid, but mom has always been asked to go to the funeral homes of the people she knew and make them look beautiful again.
Yeah.
So your daughter could thread that in to if she's going to become a doctor or work in surgery or be post surgery, those people need to be uplifted, both
Yeah.
emotionally and physically and spiritually. And what an amazing way for her to minister to them and just say, hey, I'm here to do your nails and I'm here to make you beautiful and make you feel beautiful inside and out. I think that's fabulous because I watched my mom and that work ethic all those years do that, and your daughter has that amazing potential to do that. I just think that's phenomenal. So
Yeah.
and that's I love the fact that you and your wife are doing that. Talk to me about the Diamond Education podcast and how that was started. You and your wife are doing it together, and is this where you are raising more awareness to the parents around the nation on tools for helping them, whether it's homeschool or ESA or whatever?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. We're trying to highlight it. It's a little bit more Utah specific so far, but we're really trying to highlight options that parents have that are
Mhm.
outside of the traditional system. Everybody understands how the traditional public school system went. Most of us went to a traditional public school when we were growing up, and so we understand what that model looks like.
Mhm.
And so we're trying to bring on these new micro school founders or homeschoolers who have been doing it for a while and talk about these different options that are out there that people might not be aware of. And then really what we want to do is boost a parent's ability to have that capacity
Mhm.
to go out and try these things. That's something that I is unfortunate. A lot of parents just feel like they cannot um, they can't they're not good enough to be able to teach their own children, and I that's
Right.
just a lie. A
Mhm.
lot of parents, I mean, they've been through school, they have a lot of knowledge and skills that
Right.
they can pass on to their children, and
Right.
along with that they can combine it with their family values,
Mhm.
and it makes for a really beautiful beautiful education here at our home when we homeschool, but we also have 2 children that are going to a micro school that
Mhm.
meets our values. They're aligned with our religion, and
Yeah.
so they have these conversations there about God, and they're excited to come home
Oh,
and
that's
share that with mom and dad about this cool conversation they had in class with their peers. And we love that. We have loved that aspect of it. And so with our podcast, we're just trying to highlight those options
mhm.
for any family out there so that they know what's available
Yeah.
and how they can take advantage of it.
No, I think that's fabulous. One thing I want to do after the end of this show, I want to connect with you and introduce you to Chris DeGaulle and his wife, Christine. I don't know if you're familiar with them. He is the morning drive host for 990 AM in Philadelphia. His wife was a school teacher and still is, and they started, I believe, Leaping Education podcast, and she does it like once every couple weeks. But I'd like to put you guys in touch with one another because he is very much on Salem Radio at the very forefront of the education conversations because of living through similar to every other parent, but having a wife that's a teacher. And I think you
Yeah.
guys would be really great overlapping with the podcast and just really having those bigger conversations. So I'd like to do that with you and for you guys. Let me ask you this on a final question and a final note. Can you kind of give me the state of education across the nation as we head into 2023? We're already a couple weeks into January, but what should we be looking out for as we head into not just state by state, but more at the federal piece as well? What are tools that we can give our parents, and what are things that we need to keep up on the radar screen?
Yeah, one of the things that the government is really worried about, a lot of state governments, a lot of federal governments are worried about, is the learning loss that happened during COVID-19. When a lot of these areas that told their parents stay home for 2 years,
Mhm.
and now they're saying, well, now we got to do something because we've lost all our this education and all this time. Well, yeah, you told the kids not to come,
Mhm.
so it makes sense that they're behind. And so there's
Right.
a lot of options out there for parents to really pay attention to
Uh-huh.
that they can take advantage of. There's tutoring. A lot of districts are starting to contract with tutors, like tutoring companies, to really nail that individual piece.
Mhm.
But as far as what they're doing, I my best recommendation is to start looking at the options that you have in your area.
Okay.
Across the nation, there are these micro schools that are popping up. Homeschooling is an option in every state. Some are more restrictive, some are less restrictive, but it is an option.
Mhm.
And I would just encourage them to look into that. You can do it. Even if you try and model it after the traditional system, you will do it much better because you will be more responsive to your child.
Mhm.
And besides the child themselves, nobody is more invested in their child's education than the parents, and they
Exactly.
will make sure that it happens. But yeah, you can look to see all of these. I think there's going to be just a tidal wave of education choice programs being passed
Mhm.
across the nation on the state level. And
Mhm.
there is a push to even have a national school choice bill. I don't know where that will go. That's not something I'm personally interested, because then that does bring in that federal government,
Yeah,
and that's not
exactly.
something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
But there are those options that are out there that
Mhm.
are coming. One of
Mhm.
the best things you can do is get to know your local legislator, state legislator, local city, county.
Right.
I think one of the things that has happened, and one of the things that COVID-19 did, is it woke up parents
Yeah.
to what's going on in education,
Mhm.
and they didn't like what they saw.
Mhm.
And so maintain that momentum, maintain those relationships, build those relationships, and just start having those conversations.
Mhm.
Um, have the conversations with your local legislator and say, hey, I heard about Arizona doing this, or I heard about Florida doing that,
Right.
or Texas is getting ready to do this other thing. Utah's passing an education spending account.
Mhm.
What is North Carolina doing?
Right.
What is South Carolina doing? What is New York doing? What are some things that we can do in our state to improve the state of education here, and really improve it for not just teachers but also parents and students, who are the people we should be worried about the most.
No, I completely agree with you. I just had a thought for a hot second. With homeschooling, can you cite different curriculums that you use? do you use like Liberty or Bob Jones? I just think of obviously the faith-based schools that I know that have that. Is that where you pull your resources from, or is there a consortium of?
So yeah, so you can find a lot of different curriculums. What we've used it's called Kathy Duffy. She's
Okay.
an old homeschooler. She started back in the 80s and started
Uh-huh.
just compiling all these different curriculums, and she writes reviews about them.
Okay.
You can see what they are. That so if somebody is looking for curriculum there, we just spoke with there's a local religious school here in Utah
Mhm.
who started a website called lifted.world.
Okay.
That's an area that they're trying to be kind of that one-stop shop for parents. So if they're really worried about it, they can go there, and they're starting to work with other faiths.
Mhm.
So whether somebody is, Muslim or Jewish,
Right.
they're starting to work with those faiths to create videos that
Mm.
will promote the values of that faith
Mhm.
combined with the science lesson that they're doing. And so those are some areas I would begin with. We personally use things like
Okay.
IEW.com. If you go there, it's the Institute for Excellence in Writing. Andrew Pudwa, a lot of homeschoolers know who he is, and we really like him for our language arts, our writing piece. But
Okay.
yeah, you can start looking around and seeing these different things, and really it's just what your child needs. We use different curriculums with each of our different children, and that feels overwhelming. So start with one curriculum that you use for all your children would be
Mhm.
my recommendation. And then as you get comfortable, you can start to really individualize and customize for the individual children.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. Well, Jon England, I loved having you here this morning. You are such a wealth of information. And as we continue to head into, I'd like to have you come back and hear some of your newer stories that you're writing. But as we head into getting ready for college, those seniors graduating, that whole scope, I'd love to hear some of your common sense ideas on that, and tools for parents then, and then tools for the new graduates as we head into that time period. So I'm blessed to have you here. Thank you so much for all you've done. Thank you for your service. And thank you to you and your wife for what you're doing for the next generation.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. We will see you soon. Many blessings to you.